What's up, y'all? It's your boy Drew. It's 11:11 on 11:11. So I felt like it was a good time to jump on here and show you guys what I'm working on. I probably still will make this its own video, maybe like an 8-minute video that you could share, and everything will be condensed down. But I got all these tabs open. Been looking into this. I'm gonna show you what I've been looking into. As always, you can go to chalkbodyonline.com if my page ever gets nuked or whatever, and you can find me there if I'm ever get booted out of here or whatever. So what I want to go into, what I've been looking into recently, is this subject called male microchimerism. Floats around. It's a article, and it floats around the internet. I've seen it every couple years, and it'll go get passed around on Facebook and everything. And can you guys hear me? But here's one of these kind of clickbaity type articles that pushes this every maybe like 2 years. This story kind of comes around. It says women absorb and retain DNA from every man they have sex with. Women retain and carry DNA from every man who they had intercourse, according to a new study. The study discovered startling information by accident, originally trying to determine if women who have been pregnant with a son might be more predisposed to certain neurological diseases that occur more frequently in males. But as the scientists picked apart the female brain, the study began to veer wildly off course. As it turns out, the female brain is even more mysterious than we previously thought. The study found that female brains often harbor male microchimerism, or in other words, the presence of male DNA that originated from another individual and are genetically distinct from the cells that make up the rest of the woman. According to the study, 63% of the females tested harbored male microchimerism in the brain. Male microchimerism was present in multiple brain regions. So 63% of women carry male DNA cells that live on in their brains. Obviously, the researchers wanted to know where the male DNA came from. Anyone care to guess? From the woman's fathers? No. Your father's DNA combines with your mother's to create your own unique DNA. So where else could it come from? Through the study, the researchers assumed that the most likely answer was that all male DNA found living in the female brain came from a male pregnancy. That was the safe, politically correct assumption. But these researchers were living in denial. Because when they autopsied the brains of women who had never been pregnant ever, let alone with a male child, they still found male DNA cells prevalent in the female brain. At this point, the scientists didn't know what the hell was going on. Confused, they did their best to hide the evidence until they could understand and explain it. They buried it in numerous sub-studies and articles, but if you sift through them all, you'll find the damning statement alone, the one line that gives it all away, that explains exactly where these male DNA cells come from. And I'll read this off of the actual source. We'll go into the source. So this isn't just some clickbait article. But basically it says the conclusion, it could be from, blood circulation, spontaneous abortion, vanished male twin, or sexual intercourse. Okay, so this is something, and then this is exactly what I'm reading everywhere I find this article. His comments being from seems to be mostly women disagreeing with this and saying this is not true. So I went deeper into it, and I've been looking into this for about a week now, and I have a lot of links to prove that this is probably likely the case, and that sexual intercourse is much more than they've told us, much more of an energy exchange event. But here's a comment that says, this is a great example of people purposely taking research results out of context and using it to promote an agenda. So this goes great too with what we talk about, like reality is rendered differently for each person. It seems like the people that want to believe this, they believe that the researchers have overlooked it to remain politically correct. And the people that don't want to believe it, they believe that this research is being used to push this agenda. So as with most things, it's like two or, at least two different sides seeing exactly what they want to see on it. But if you go anywhere on the internet and find these articles, you're going to see the same kind of comments under everything. You'll have like right-wing comments of like patriarchal, women are cum dumpsters and blah, blah, blah. Like, I see a lot of that, which is bullshit. But then I see a lot of these women on here, completely denying this and saying there's no science behind it, which is also bullshit. As with most things, there's some truth somewhere down in the middle. So something I've heard a lot of researchers talk about lately is back in the day we used to say do your own research. And now I'm hearing people say don't do your own research. Find trusted researchers that you trust, that you can go to them for the answers, because what you're going to have is when you go to here, you just have, do women absorb DNA? And you're led here to one of these top results on Google. So the average normie is going to type that in. They're going to come here to Snopes, and they're going to slide down here. It's going to say it's false. So the average normie is done right here. The episode's over. There's nothing else to talk about. It's over. People in here probably know, but if you stumble across this video later, Snopes it was a man and a wife. That's it. And they got a bunch of liberal money to be christened as the arbitrators of truth or whatever, the authority of the truth. And the guy he was taking the money and paying hookers. So I think his wife left him, and now Snopes is just one guy. So the average normie probably thinks Snopes is like, they rent a building and there's thousands or 100 reporters that work for them, and they dig deep into all these claims, and no, it's just one guy. What's up, y'all? What's up, Christina? She said my sound is good. I came in here to check and make sure people could hear me. I should have done that a lot earlier. But we're going to go in here. Let's just keep going. I'm taking my time on this tonight, so kick back and relax. We're on that 1111 portal. So let's look at what Snopes has to say about it. Snopes says this claim, like the male microchimerism, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, so my bad if I'm not. The viral article responsible for it purports to describe is an incongruous mixture of information whose ultimate purpose remains unclear. They recap what the article says, and they say the significance in this case of that specific research paper was that it demonstrated that these male cells, wherever they came from, were able to cross what is known as the blood-brain barrier, a semi-permeable membrane that prevents most chemicals in the blood from entering the brain. The linked study, in fact, does not once mention sexual intercourse as a proposed mechanism. This is as close as you will get. And this is right from the source again. They're quoting it from the source, but we're going to actually go to the source. So let me finish reading what Snopes says. Snopes says, an odd chronological twist that necessitates abandoning the notion that time progresses linearly in one direction. Your newswire then used text from a paper published in 2005 to support the argument that scientists buried the salacious truth discovered in 2012 in other sub-studies. That 2005 paper, which does indeed show the presence of male cells in women who had never given birth to males, or in some cases at all, makes only passing reference to the possibility that sexual intercourse alone could contribute male microchirality in women, noting the issue has yet to be studied. A paper published fittingly in the journal Chimerism in 2015 investigated this topic further, concluding that potentially all of those potential mechanisms may contribute. That paper, which was fairly limited in its data set, makes it clear that the sexual intercourse transfer of male microchimerism remains entirely speculative. So Snopes says it's bullshit. Let's go to the source of this article and see if anyone's got any comments or whatever. First of all, thanks for being in here. And feel free to blow up these comments. I still haven't figured out how to get them on the screen while I'm talking. So I'll get to that eventually. As always, I'm just a mess here, so I gotta help me find the. I gotta find the right articles. I have all 12 different articles up or something. And where I had first heard of this was here on Godlike Productions. Godlike Productions used to be good way back in the day. What was going on there a long time ago, and a lot of stuff about, a lot of stuff was about like UFOs or like what you'd consider. And looking back on it, that was done across all conspiracy platforms, which was mostly on forums at that time. So they seemed like the people that the media controllers flooded all these conspiracy pages and astroturfed them, pretty much red pilling everyone to bring in Trump. And now these people that are just waking up now, they're getting onto that same things, which the new astroturfing is the QAnon. That's where they just pay these bots or whatever to go out and just flood this information wherever they want it. But yeah, I first heard of it here on GOP, which is a Tavistock production, and this was in 2013. So this guy posted the whole thing, and he's got the actual links to the studies. Oh, I'm whack. I'm on a ban now from... It's in one of these tabs. Hold on. I'm sorry. I tried to have this all... My bad, you guys. See if I can find this real quick. I was certain I had this one up, but I don't think I did. Either way, let's just keep going. But this guy writes the conclusion here. And I'll leave the link to this when the video uploads later. I'll go back and find the link and I'll leave it in there just for time's sake. But this is what the conclusions of it said. Male microchimerism was not infrequent in women without sons. Besides known pregnancies, other possible sources of male microchimerism included unrecognized spontaneous abortion, vanished male twin, an older brother transferred by the maternal circulation, or sexual intercourse. Male microchimerism was significantly more frequent, and levels were higher in women with induced abortion than in women with other pregnancy histories. Further studies are needed to determine specific origins of male microchimerism in women. So they have a list of possible things, with sexual intercourse being one of them. And this OP guy, he goes on to say, it's so convenient how they flat out ignore the most obvious source of the male microchimerism in the DNA body. All periodicals just deleted it altogether. This has very important ramifications for women, especially promiscuous women who practice unprotected sexual intercourse. Every male you absorb spermatozoa from becomes a living part of you for life. The women autopsied in this study were elderly. Some had carried the living male DNA for well over 50 years. This will certainly piss feminists off, but it explains so much about women, life, and relationships. Sperm is alive. It is living cells. When it is injected in you, it swims and attaches and burrows into your flesh. Now again, this is the OP of this post saying this. If it's in your mouth, it swims and climbs into your nasal passages, inner ear, and behind your eyes. Then it digs in. It enters your bloodstream and collects in your brain and spine, like something out of a sci-fi movie. I love how the agenda has convinced young ladies to be promiscuous. They knowingly are sabotaging generations of young women. Of course they are. The male DNA can also pass into and become part of the fetus from an entirely different male. So if your woman has a long track record, then your kids are likely carrying DNA from her past hookups too. This is why ancient Sumerian gods specifically said not to have premarital sex. Is this why, she says? Is this why they forbid homosexuality? We've only begun to understand the power and ramifications of this. And I don't know why this GOP, I've been on here all day, and now for some reason they're marking me as banned, and I can't click that link, but again, I'll post it later when I get back on there. Christina's here in the comments. She says, sexual intercourse is an exchange of information or code, so it makes sense they have found male DNA in women because DNA is code. Exactly, and as I go through these articles I have up, it seems like the man is the DNA emitter and the woman is the DNA receiver. And that's what the system doesn't like to hear. They don't like to hear that, or they like to promote that men and women are equal, which they're not. Men and women have different strengths and weaknesses, different roles to fulfill. So I don't even know where to start on this. I'm just going to kind of go across these links I have, really in no particular order, because I've had these tabs open for about a week. So here's something I found kind of similar. DNA from sperm of ex-partners lingers in female flies and influences the genetics of her offspring. So this is from medicaldaily.com, October 1st, 2014. I'll do my best when I'm done to place all these links in the video so that you guys can verify all this. Let me read this one real quick. It says, when a woman breaks up with a man, she usually wants every remnant of him removed from her life. A new study suggests, try as she might, there may be one last piece of him that she's stuck with for good, his DNA. A study from Australia has managed to prove that fly offspring are able to resemble a mother's previous sexual partner, even when conceived with their father's sperm. The idea of telegony, or previous mates influencing a woman's offspring, has been around for centuries. It was first proposed by the Greek philosopher Aristotle and was accepted as science until the early 1900s, when it was disproved and replaced by the more modern genetic theory, according to the study's press release. Unfortunately, the theory was largely used as a fear height by changing the amount of nutrients in their diet. They then mated immature females with either large or small males. Later on, the now mature females were again mated with males of various sizes. The subsequent offspring were then studied, and what researchers observed was quite remarkable. We found that even though the second male sired the offspring size was determined by what the mother's previous mating partner ate as a maggot. Our findings take this to a whole new level, showing a male can also transmit some of his acquired features to offspring sired by other males. The researchers are not yet sure about why this phenomenon occurs, but believe it may be due to molecules in the seminal fluid of the first male being absorbed by the female's immature eggs, and then influencing the growth of the offspring of a later mate. This finding only adds to the already complicated field of genetics. Scientists are only just beginning to grasp the concept that offspring genetics are influenced by non-genetic factors such as their parents' diet. Our new findings take this thing to a whole new level, some scientists said. So to answer this question that I'm sure is on every one of your minds, no, the researchers are not yet sure whether this phenomenon exists in other species. But testimony of many experienced breeders suggests it may be. As for humans, I don't even want to begin opening that can of worms. But Crean, the scientist guy, he did tell Medical Daily in an email that she's not ruling out this possibility. A female scientist. Well, what's next? They're going to vote or what? That would be the downfall of the West. There is no evidence of such effects in the humans, but there has not been any research on this possibility in humans. But there is potential for such effects in mammals, explained Crean. For example, there is a lot of fetal DNA in maternal blood during pregnancy, and this could potentially play a role in such effects. There is also evidence in mammals that seminal fluid affects offspring development, so semen from one male could potentially influence the development of eggs fertilized by another male, which is what we think is happening in the flies. So it seems to be happening in the flies. And this telegony, or telogony, I think that's how you say it. Aristotle was behind it, and Darwin was hardcore behind it. So the people that are going to be most against this microchimerism is going to be like mostly Darwin believers, be the evolutionists, which have become like feminists and everything. And yeah, this is more on that telegony. I don't know if I'm saying any of this right. These are new terms to me. But telegony is the belief that the sire, first mated to a female, will have an influence upon some of that female's later offspring by another male. Although the reality of telegony was acknowledged by such authorities as Darwin, Spencer, Romanes, and many experienced breeders, it has been met with skepticism because of Weissman's unfavorable comments and negative results obtained in several test experiments. In this article, alleged cases of telegony are provided. A search of literature of cell biology and biochemistry reveals several plausible mechanisms that may form the basis for telegony. These involve the penetration of spermatozoa into the somatic tissues of the female genital tract, the incorporation of the DNA released by the spermatozoa into the maternal somatic cells, the presence of fetal DNA in maternal blood, as well as sperm RNA-mediated non-Mendelian inheritance of epigenetic changes. So that was Darwin shit. That was Aristotle even pushed it. Right here too has Darwin's pangenesis been rediscovered. This is from 2014. Darwin regarded in his 1859 book The Origin of Species as an abstract that contains no molecular basis for the heritable variations on which natural selection operated. Blah, blah. Hold on, let me get to the meat of this. Telegony is the subject of a heated scientific controversy. It means that a previous mating may have influence on a female's offspring by subsequent mating. According to Darwin's pangenesis, telegony was intelligible through the diffusion, retention, and action of the gemmules included within the spermatozoa of the previous male. So Darwin goes deep into that, into his book. It seemed to go away in the early 1900s, kind of with the rise of feminism as well. Hey, what's up? We got EBT in the house. What's good, y'all? Christina says, I think all these codes are exchanged between all the partners, so your spouse may have had before you, so you get entangled with all the codes through intercourse, protection or not. Protection? What's that? Never heard of it. I'll come back to that one here. Let me slide this one to the end. Here's another one, more about that telegony. Woman's first partner may become genetic father of all her kids. Big Soviet Encyclopedia describes telegony as an assumed effect of typical characteristics of a man who copulated with a woman upon the woman's future children that she may have with other men. The phenomenon of telegony was discovered in the first quarter of the 19th century. Accurate genetic experiments conducted by many researchers at the end of the 19th century did not prove the phenomenon really existed. The hypothesis saying that telegony actually existed was first stated at the end of the 19th century. At the time, it said that the result of the previous pregnancy would determine all the subsequent ones. So it sounds very much like a scientific hypothesis indeed. Here's other scientists that co-signed that theory back in the day. Here's another article about that. Find out how women keep DNA from men she had sex with. So it seems to me it's almost like the woman has like a guest book, and if the guy's in there puts his code in there, and then he's just he's written his name in that guest book, and it's there forever because that sperm eventually breaks through the blood-brain barrier. This is kind of a rehash of the same ones we said earlier, where they just rehash that study. With every man a woman has sexual relationship with, she absorbs his spermatozoa, which becomes part of you forever. The study autopsied the brain of elderly women, many of them who had been carrying male DNA for more than 50 years. This startling and fascinating discovery is only the beginning to understand the true consequence of sexual intercourses. So, I wonder if that explains, and I have it up here, that explains why people that are older long married couples do look alike, study finds. So if the genetic material is influencing the female, then you can say, like, people that have been married a long time, they start to look alike. People will say that as they get older. And here's an actual scientific study from August 11th, 1987. It says, science is lending support to the old belief that married couples eventually begin to look alike. Couples who originally bore no particular resemblance to each other when first married had, after 25 years of marriage, come to resemble each other, though the resemblance may be subtle, according to a new research report. Now again, this is from 87. The increase in facial similarity results from decades of shared emotions. That's their explanation for it. They say they're together all the time, so they share emotions all the time, so they scrunch their face the same way at the same time, and they'll get the same wrinkles, is basically what they were saying. They took 24 photographs of couples when they were first married, and another 24 were of the same couple 25 years later, most taken around the time of their silver wedding anniversary. All couples in the photograph were white, lived in Michigan or Wisconsin, and were between 50 and 60 years old at the time of the second picture. The young couple showed only a chance similarity to each other, the study found, while the judges found a definite resemblance between couples who had been married a quarter century. While the resemblances were not dramatic, some seemed to involve subtle shifts in facial wrinkles and other facial contours, for instance. They were marked enough that the judges were able to match husband and wives far more often than when the couples were older than when they were younger, and the resemblance were greater in some couples than in others, the study found. The study, done by Dr. Zajonc with his graduate students Pamela Edelman, Sheila Murphy, and Paula Niedenthal, will be published later this year in the Journal of Motivation and Emotion. Dr. whatever pronounced Zions, so I guess he's pronounced Zions, in explaining the findings holds that factors such as similar diets and thus deposits of fatty tissues may contribute to the resemblance but are not crucial. When the photographs were evaluated for facial fat, the older couples were found to have less similarity than the younger ones. Instead, he proposed that people often unconsciously mimic the facial expressions of their spouses in a silent empathy, and that over the years, sharing the same expression shapes the face similarly. So that's his explanation. My explanation is that, grandma drank gallons, so that's why she looks like grandpa. If you understand that this sperm is alive, it's DNA, and it's doing everything it can to just burrow into that bloodstream and everything, that's why your granny looks like your grandpa. Other experts agree that shared emotions could gradually sculpture the faces of a couple to become more similar, but they do not agree with Dr. Zion's explanation. Common life experiences over years and years can alter facial musculature and wrinkle patterns, leading to an increased resemblance. But there's no reason to believe it has anything to do with blood flow to the brain. And this one just keeps going on. And nowhere in this article does it touch on any DNA transfer or anything like that. But I think that's a good anecdotal evidence of this being real, that women are absorbing the man's DNA. And yeah, and EVT says, why would they put that? How to pronounce his name? Zion. Exactly. Is Drew calling everyone a hoe? No, just me. I don't remember what this one was I have up. Let's see here. They were able to store image inside of a DNA. So DNA is just basically a storage unit or whatever, right? Let's see what other ones I got up here. I got all these different ones up here. I'm getting confused of which ones are which. Yeah, Snopes says it's not real. Here's another article. Where does it come from? Again, they say no. The claim comes from an absurd clickbait article. Where did the cells come from? Most likely explanation is pregnancy. This is according to this debunk site. During implantation, embryonic cells are programmed to divide extremely fast and invade the mother's bloodstream. Sometimes they can establish populations in other parts of her body that survive for the rest of her life. But wait, another study showed that a few women had male cells, even though, so far as they knew, they had never been pregnant. And then they consider it to be a leap to say that it's sperm collected from sex partners. Well, what's more likely? Someone that didn't get pregnant? Maybe they didn't have that much sex and never did get pregnant. Oh, what's more likely, that or they did have sex once and now there's just the genetic material of another man signed their guest book and it still exists in there. It says it's remotely possible, in italics, it's remotely possible that women might sometimes retain some non-sperm cells from male partners, since that's never been studied and biology is weird. But there's currently no reason to think it's true, and many reasons to think it's not. For starters, the female reproductive tract is actually a horrible, unfriendly place to start a new cell colony. And that's actually not true, because the sperm lives in there for a week first, so we'll show that too. And so these debunk ones basically ignore the part of the conclusion of the scientists in the conclusion where they wrote it's possibly from sex, which would actually be the most likely one in my opinion. And in this one they talked about the same study with the flies. But where's that zebra one? I feel like I'm missing a couple tabs that I was looking. Here's a story I have from my real life that makes sense now that I know this. Is that I knew this guy and he suspected that his old lady had been cheating on him, and she got pregnant. So they went and they did the DNA test. This was way back in the day, and it came back like 77%. That he was the father, which I'd never heard of. No one had ever heard of that. So he was going around asking people like what that meant. So what I think it means, now that looking into this, is that he probably did impregnate her, which started the division of the cells. And as the cells are dividing and the baby's being born, it probably starts just grabbing any DNA it can find in there, and it's just grabbing it into there. So probably shortly after that impregnation happened, the lady probably cheated on him with someone else, and that's probably another portion of that kid, I would guess. That would be my guess. I don't know, though. I can't... Where's that? There was one... Yeah, anything under 99% is considered inconclusive when they do DNA testing. And like I said, the dude had 77%. So I don't know, man. I think it's wild. When you look at the chimera itself is a mythological Greek creature of different, it's like 3 or 4 different heads, different types of beasts, all amalgamated into one. So that would go right with what we're talking about here, is just different DNAs making up one entity or whatever. I need to find that one that was, they had one of a zebra. This is just the pictures of it, but basically, let me see if I can find the article too. They did is they made it a mule. I think it was a mule and maybe a donkey, whatever, and a zebra. And the baby came out and it was like basically retarded. It wasn't able to do what they needed it to do. But then when the mule later went on and had babies with other mules, was sired by other mules, then they had zebra stripes on them. I don't know if you can really see this. So even though the zebra wasn't the father, the later bloodlines showed those stripes, faint stripes. So that zebra seemed to permanently alter that DNA of the other one. I can't remember if it was mule or, hold on, zebra. Yeah, it was called Lord Morton's mare. So you can look that one up. It's called Lord Morton's mare. And so when I went deeper into this, and I posted this on my Instagram recently, but I found this video. I'm going to play this video, even it's kind of long, but it's really important to understand. This lady breaks it down really good, so I'm just going to play it and let it run. If you've already seen it, take a bathroom break or whatever. That's what I'm going to do, and I'll be back when this video is done. If you don't know this, I bet everyone in here knows it. Maybe somebody watching this later doesn't know it. You can go here on these videos, and you can change the playback speed of these videos to make them faster. It's a huge game changer if you don't know this. So I'm going to set it to 1.5 speed. It might be a little fast for you, but as you get better at increasing the speed on these videos, you can easily crank them up to 2x and be blasting through videos twice as fast as you were. So I'm going to let this video play, and when she's done, we'll research what she says and see if it's true.
Vicky, we live in this hookup culture where much of our society, they think that they can just go on one night stands and just have consequence-free relationships, sexual relationships.
Well, it's interesting because that's a lie that abounds, that we've come through the media and other things to believe there's no consequence to sex. And as long as you're contracepting or whatever, it's all fine. But we don't really understand how it is our bodies work. We need to recognize, for instance, that we as women undergo profound changes when we have sex with a male, that there are many things that change. It takes our body 6 months to make the adaptation to the sperm of our male partner, because before that, we are in an autoimmune reaction. Our immune cells are testing. What is this? Is this an infection? What is it? Our body comes to conclude that this is our sexual partner and now has made an adaptation. The reality is that this allows us women to be without consequence in terms of when we conceive children with this male, our body recognizes that this is with our partner. We carry cells from every child we ever conceive, so we carry the DNA of our partners the rest of our lives. It's an interesting question. If I've had multiple partners and perhaps conceptions with multiple partners, that what might that mean to my body in terms of the immune system? Because I will now literally be carrying the genetic material of my partners contained in my children. We don't know what the long-term consequences of that are. The sperm has many antigens on it. And again, we think this is kind of neutral. We women have bodies that are acidic in chemistry, and males are alkaline. But what's interesting is that the last thing that happens with sperm production is there's a coating of vitamin C that's put on the sperm that allows it to survive in our woman bodies. So we make this adaptation to our partner. Sperm has these antigens, and interestingly, in men, if there should be a vasectomy or damage, what we've discovered is that in the male body, sperm and blood don't ever meet each other if it's healthy. When there's damage, for the first time, the sperm and the blood meet, and it sets off an autoimmune reaction in the male. It's designed to do that, but this can lead to health issues for the male. Vasectomies are promoted as, safe, not a problem. But in reality, there are a few very brave doctors who have written about the fact that the male who's had a vasectomy may now develop autoimmune disorders, arthritis, some other sorts of diseases. There's also the question, of course, of where does the sperm go, which can create some very uncomfortable things for the male. But there's more, again, also for the male. The reality is that seminal fluid, which we think of as kind of a carrier, it just kind of gets the sperm where it needs to go, is in fact biochemically very active. There are more than 30 different compounds that are contained in the seminal fluid. Different kinds of sugars, things like zinc, which would enhance our, as women, autoimmune system so that we might not contract diseases from pathogens that would be present in intercourse. All these different kinds of substances. There are also many, many hormones that are there. Luteinizing hormone, we think that's a woman hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, that's a woman hormone. 13 kinds of prostaglandins. Some other things like dopamine are there. Why? Because we women absorb that material, and we're changed forever. Every time we have intercourse with someone, if we absorb any of that seminal fluid, it's in our system for at least 15 hours. We're changed in a very real and concrete way by this sexual intimacy that's there. Furthermore, the brain chemistry in both men and women is triggered with sexual intimacy. And we believe that because I say, this is just a sexual encounter for pleasure, I'm not going to be changed, that it works. Our brain never gets the message that this has no consequence. The assumption on the part of our body is that sexual intimacy always has consequences, always has meaning. And as soon as we have this intimacy with this person, we trigger brain chemistry. We trigger, for instance, oxytocin, which is a bonding hormone both in men and women. There are other feedback systems there that make the brain feel good. Men, in particular, get vasopressin. This is a male hormone. We women have a little, but it's predominantly male. And when we have sexual intimacy with someone, what happens to the male is this hormone now makes him have a preference for this female that he just had sex with. Hooking up, the sense that it doesn't matter, is physiologically an impossibility. We know that in men, it takes 72 days to produce sperm, and that at each point there's a change in the sperm. It's changed in some way. But what we don't realize is that the sperm has to be changed in the woman's body to have the capacity to enter the egg. There's a phenomenon when the sperm enters that's called capacitation and adaptation. For 5 hours or so, it sits in our woman bodies, and our woman chemistry changes the sperm. So now the sperm has the capacity to enter the egg, to go through this acrosome reaction. Before that, it can't do it. It swims differently after this. It swims with, if you will, more intent. Prior to that, the tail is kind of lazy and it moves it where it needs to go, but not with determination. After being changed by the female body, the tail is this whiplash kind of thing. It's very direct, it's very effective in moving the sperm forward to meet the ovum. This is incredible when you think about it. There is an author in Britain who has written about the fact that supposedly there are 3 types of male sperm. The first is called the egg getter, the second is called the blocker, and the third is called the killer. I think maybe he was a rugby fan or something, because they're not really highly technical terms, but if you look at pictures of sperm, you can see 2 of these for certain. You can see that the egg getters are what we expect. They're very sleek, a pointed head and a tail, but the blockers are misshapen. They're kind of boxy, or they don't look like this very sleek sperm. The intent of the blockers is that they will fill in the crypts in the cervix. There are little compartments there, so that the egg getters can move through without getting stuck. Of the millions of sperm that come into our bodies, there's maybe only 20 or 40 that really get to the point of the egg. So there's this protective factor there that, we want to get the egg getters where they need to go. The role of the killers has to do only when women have had multiple partners in a short period of time. These are very poisonous little sperm, and their intent is to kill the sperm of the other male. So effectively, there's a sperm war that goes on in the woman's body when there have been multiple partners. Also think about this in terms of the adaptation of her autoimmune system. Who's my partner? Her immune system must be on a real state of arousal here, because there's sperm from several males, and her body is trying to make this time adaptation. And what happens, this is purely a question that I don't know the answer to, but what happens when I've had many partners and my body hasn't made this 6-month adaptation to the recognition that this is my partner? Now, you can get pregnant before this. You can get pregnant the first time you have sex. In fact, there's always a question sometimes from young people. They've been told you can't get pregnant the first time you have sex. But the reality is that we women are interested in sex. We're more arousable at the time of ovulation. Males around us perceive that we're ovulating by scent. They have an elevated testosterone level. They're more interested in sex. And sex happens, and pregnancy happens, and people are surprised by, how did that come to be? But the awareness that we're different. To know also that we women are very conditionable at the time of ovulation. This is some media effects research, and they had shown an erotic movie to women who were ovulating, and all of the women had an erotic response to this movie. They showed the same movie to women at other phases. We have different stages of our cycle. We have the follicular stage when the little follicles on our ovaries are developing. We have the ovulation stage when one of the follicles breaks loose and the ovum is released in our body. And then the last stage is the luteal phase, when the little place on the ovary where the ovum was released becomes a major chemical factory, keeping the ovum alive to see if there is a pregnancy, and if there is, then keeping the baby alive until the baby builds its placenta. But this awareness here that during ovulation, we're arousable. They showed the same movie to a group of women at these other phases, and there was a consistent response, but it was basically a very stupid, dirty movie. No erotic response. But the woman who saw this film once during the ovulatory phase had an erotic response shown in the movie now again at any point in her cycle. The anthropologists talk about the fact that this is perhaps why, if we have sex with Mr. Wrong when we're ovulating, we now are hooked to Mr. Wrong. We all know that Mr. Wrong leads to Mr. Wrong number 2. So this awareness of how this give and take, this dance, if you will, between men and women is so important. And it's so critical that we as women and men understand there's a lot more going on in our bodies than we've ever been told, so that we can, A, make really good choices about this. Do I want my body to be changed by this male? If I'm going to have sex with him, I am going to be changed by him. And we don't even know what some of the long-term consequences of this are, but we know that she's absorbing the material. And how do I want to live my life? How do I want to be changed by my partner? What consequences might there be if I make these choices where I have, repetitive sexual partners? We don't know what some of these long-term consequences are. We do know, for instance, that the woman who has multiple partners in a short period of time may develop an infection that's called bacterial vaginosis, which is a very serious infection. And what happens is that the chemistry of her genital area has been changed, and now the bacteria that can grow there are what are called anaerobic bacteria. Those are always serious infections. Again, what we think is simple, what we think is without consequence, in fact, has serious long-term consequences. And the more I learn about this, the more I'm in awe that nature, God, has built us in this way to be complementary to each other, that we truly are changed by our partner and really become one in terms of this.
Thank you, Vicki.
So that's on YouTube, called Women Having Sex with Many Men. And she's saying, like, there's different types of sperm blockers and everything. Let's look that one up. I know that one's true, but let's find the source for it. It's even under Wikipedia as Sperm Wars. It's the name of the book. Because that's what's happening inside these women's body. You get the ones that stay back in the cavity to fight any incoming foreign sperm that would come in later. So they're alive for a while. Double check and make sure everyone's in here. EBT said DNA science is far from infallible. It's still fairly new science. Yeah, some of that DNA shit is bullshit. But this goes with like a lot of the ancient scriptures say, even in the Bible, it says the two become the one. Ask a old Mexican lady, she'll tell you that you trade souls or whatever with the person you have sex with. It's the same kind of concept here. So a major focus of this book is here. It's called Sperm Heteromorphism. What? Sperm apparent in every normal human ejaculate, but also at any one time fewer than 1% seem capable of responding to and fertilizing an egg. A similarly low proportion of fertile sperm is found in the ejaculates of mice. Baker calls these fertile sperm egg getters and claims the rest of the sperm in the ejaculate are infertile kamikaze sperm or blockers, whose primary purpose is to prevent other men's sperm from getting to the egg. He cites data suggesting that in Britain at least 4% of children are conceived via sperm competition, and claims that this lower figure is consistent with the earlier finding that 10% of children have a biological father who is other than their supposed father. Baker describes in detail how killer sperm actively seek out rival sperm and kill them with poison from acrosomes to prevent them from getting to the egg. This literal sperm warfare was not observed in the subsequent experiment, but Baker criticizes the protocol in this latter experiment. So it sounds like there's just this big chemical war going on in these women's bodies that are sleeping with multiple men at the same time or in a short period of time. And to me, I can look at a woman's face and you can see right through one that's got that slut look, for lack of a better term. I don't know what else to say it. And I wonder if that's the thing here. Slut face, I better be careful here. This might show me something crazy. They got, all guys know it. There's a certain look to these girls. I don't know what you would call it to look it up on Google without getting too crazy of results back. Get my channel strike down, but they definitely have a certain type of look to them. Probably because there's just all sorts of DNA transfer happening inside of there. And I don't know. That would explain why those people are the women that sleep around a lot too. They're like really, they seem like they're crazy because there's huge chemical imbalances happening inside of their bodies. But yeah, hopefully I can boil this all down to like an 8-minute video or something like that, and have all the sources in it that people can have a video that's short enough that they can share with somebody that's not really down with this information, that can blast through this. I think it's pretty wild, and it does describe a lot. So is that why when women finally sleep with a man, they're changed forever, and that's why when women lose their virginity, they're kind of all stuck on the guy that did that to them. Here's another study I had up here that I thought lended some credence in this. They found that microchimerism, they studied girls 10 to 15 years old. But it was like in the study, the older the girl was, the more likely she was to have that. So wouldn't it be more likely that a girl that's closer to 15 years old would have had sexual intercourse more than a girl that's like 10 years old? To me, that would explain this study right here too. So it seems like this is a huge deal, that a sacred science they know of this, the elites, I mean, and if you look at like the royal bloodlines, we call them bloodlines and everything, I'm sure they're very conscious of who they breed with, including before even breeding, and of who their sexual partners are, because it seems like this is a way to pollute people's bloodlines, so dilute it down, and instead of having a pure child, you got a kid that could be multiple parts of multiple men, it seems like. I mean, we've all seen the ones on Maury. Have you seen it, where the lady will have twins by two different guys or something? I mean, she released 2 eggs and banged 2 guys within that certain time. And, but, you know, I don't know. It's just a crazy thought to me that that's how this works. And I think people need to be a lot more careful with, even men, be more careful with who they're sleeping around with and exchanging their energy with, because it's a lot more sacred than we've been led to believe. The elites push this hyper-sexualized society, but meanwhile in their own families, in their bloodlines, they're not doing that. It seems like they're not out there. They're pushing all this, and they're controlling their own. There was a book I read of this dude, Six Hexenhammer. He has an occult book about blood. See if I can get it up on here. I forget what it's called. It's a reprint of a book from the early 1900s. And basically it's about this dude that he says he says that the blood, if you keep your bloodline pure, then you have more of the skills from your ancestors. But when you pollute your bloodline, all that source to your ancestors is kind of lost. And that could be why they're pushing all this in the media too, to, you know, sleep around and everything. Let me see if I can find the name of that book. I think it's called like Secrets of Blood or something. Is that what it's called? Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to be able to find this. Not fast enough. I'll find it eventually, but I'll do a whole nother one there. But yeah, it basically made it sound like, that's something I experienced with my own kids, is that with the first kid, I was only like dabbling in music a little bit. And then the second kid, I was going hardcore on music for a couple of years. And my youngest kid, the second one, has way more musical ability. It seems like she came out super interested in music right away. I don't know if that's part of that. Maybe I kind of leveled up my music in my DNA, and then when I pass that on, that would explain why she's into it like that. And I think all this stuff needs to be done before we pass it on. I see a lot of these truther sites talking about if you stop the healing in your generation, your bloodline is healed forever or something like that. I don't think that that's true. They said this is where all these traumas stop. I think you have to stop all the traumas and kind of reprogram your own DNA through your own thoughts and clear all that out of your own computer code first before you have kids. And then you can pass on your bloodline, and it's probably not going to be in there anymore. But these people make it sound like, oh, you can be 40 or 50 years old and stop these traumas, and it's going to stop it for your whole bloodline, your kids and grandchildren and everything. I don't think that's the case. I don't know though. What do I know? I'm just some asshole that works at a grocery store, but yeah, I'm gonna condense this down as best I can. 8 to 10 minutes, hopefully. And thanks for everyone that was in here, man. It was cool. Maybe I'll do another one tomorrow night, next night or something. I want to get into more of that actor-based reality too. And kind of explain to people what we're talking about when we say that actor-based reality. So thanks for everyone that's on there. If you want to support this channel, you can go to chalkbodyoutline.com, cop a t-shirt. Hopefully I'll have some new products soon. I'm working on some new stuff. Peace out. I'll be going live with EBT in the next couple of days, and we'll go in on that Jeffrey Epstein meme that's been beat to death. So look for that on the Instagram. Peace out, y'all.